And I remember really early on going, I want to own my own alcohol brand one day.
Really?
Like, really early on, like junior designer level, like I'm going to own one. I learned more in the first 3 months than I did in 3 years of studying.
Really?
100%. I got offered a chance of a lifetime to basically go and be a music photographer on Ed Sheeran's Vineyard Tour. Willing something into existence is like a brand or a music artist or whatever it is near on impossible. And you're not going to be able to do that if you're turning up at work at 9 and you're leaving at 5 and you're going back to home to watch Netflix. So I wouldn't be sat here right now.
Do you?
Like, it's so hard.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time someone told you they don't like the product?
Yeah, I hated it.
Zach, how you doing, mate?
Good, Olly. How you doing?
Very well, mate. Thanks so much for coming down. I'm excited about today. We've got a lot to talk about, so we're going to get into it straight away. We're not going to hold back. Firstly, though, how has 2024 been for you? How's the start of the year looking?
So yeah, start of the year has been pretty good so far. We normally use we're going into our third year now, so we normally use the start of the year to like plan and our marketing spend, what we're going to do, what festivals we're going after, what our production schedule is going to look like. But we've done none of that because we've been so busy. So we've been like flying by the seat of our pants, basically trying to keep up with orders and new listings we've won. And it's obviously it's a positive that we're this busy, but it's pretty stressful.
Have you got any goals for 2024? Is there anything in your mind? We're kind of still at the start of the year. Have you mapped anything out, or has all that gone out the window as with the chaos that you've created? Yeah, the goal is to hit profitability this year in year 3. So we 4x'd every single year so far, and we're still a very lean team, which I'm sure we can get into. But we want to hit profitability as a business. Amazing. Now, when we say we're obviously talking about the brand that you've created, which I'll let you kind of give an intro to. But firstly, what is the brand? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the brand is Vinca, obviously. We make a range of organic Sicilian wines that we can with the planet in mind. We launched the business, as I said, like 2.5 years ago. We launched to elevate the format of canned wine. We're not the first to do it, but we felt there was a bit of a gap in the market for a bit more of a premium brand that had a bit of a wider universal appeal. So an 18-year-old at a music festival would pick that up, but also my mum going to the theatre. And I think that was what was missing in the canned wine sector in the UK and beyond, was that kind of universally appealing brand, basically.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, while I crack mine open and start tasting it, I'm sure you'll do the same. Before we talk more about the brand, I want to learn about you and where it all began and your childhood in particular, because I think it's always interesting for founders where they spent their younger years, whether it's like eating out of a sandbox or riding a bike, which I'm sure you did. What was childhood like for you?
Childhood was really great for me. I grew up in...
Nice.
I grew up in Suffolk, in East Anglia.
Yeah.
And I had a really great childhood. I think growing up in the countryside is a really nice place to be and really nice existence. I think like climbing trees and, all the kind of, things that, the stereotypical countryside things that you do. That's what it was. It was very free and like, running around and, did loads and loads of art and, definitely took to school a bit more from creative side of things. But my dad was a graphic designer. So that definitely helped. And my mum's like just super creative as well. So it like definitely lent into my upbringing was just very creative.
Yeah.
So,
When you say creative, does it mean not a lot of like maths and English vibes, or was it?
I did it because I had to do it. But, get me into design or the art room or music or anything like that. That was where that's where I love to be, not doing algebra.
Did you find you knew what you wanted to do when you were like younger, maybe going into those teenage years? Did you have like a path you wanted to go down? I know you had a career before starting Vinca as well, so we'll get into that. But was there any goals in mind?
I wanted to become a graphic designer, basically. I wanted to, and I kind of had that quite early goal. I didn't know if university was right for me, so straight out of uni, I went to do an art foundation degree at Ipswich College. Yep. And it was just a year long, but I absolutely fell in love with it. Like fell in love with like doing projects and, any kind of design, be it from kind of a bit more creative art side of things to a bit more commercial side of things, just loved everything of it. And then yeah, basically that was my path. I wanted to be a graphic designer, and I wanted to. And then when I went to university, I decided that I wanted to work on booze.
Why was that?
I just thought it looked really fun. I did quite a lot of internships at different places, doing like anything from sort of some bread packaging to financial reports. Yeah, I did an internship at somewhere that did alcohol, and I was like, this place is really fun.
That idea of like trying and testing stuff, when you know what the career maybe is, or you know where you want to get to, do you think the trying and the tasting is really important to do, to actually figure out what it is, what the discipline is, no matter what you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, one project I worked on was for Smirnoff Ice with their rebrand, and we did an immersive briefing where we basically went to an ice bar in London with like the full design team and like the clients, and then drank Smirnoff Ice afterwards, and it was like this very immersive experience. I remember someone saying, "Oh, who drinks Smirnoff Ice here?" And I was like, "I do." And they were like, "What? You still drink Smirnoff Ice?" I was like, "Well, a festival," and the day after.
How old are you at this point?
Too old.
Should have known better. Yeah. Amazing. So because you, after kind of education and stuff, you ended up in an agency. You kind of been in the agency world, which is obviously something I'm relatively familiar with, in London and New York. Was that kind of the next step for you? Were you focused on going on to that side?
Yeah, I think whatever I've put my mind to from an early age, I've just wanted to be the best at.
Yeah.
And I want to work for the best agencies and the biggest agencies. So, I started interning after graduating, and like, I mean, I look back at some of my work when I graduated, and like, it was fairly basic and not very good, but I had the work ethic and the drive.
Yeah.
And it was actually one of the things when I did my internship at Design Bridge in London, the creative director was like, your work's not good enough for you to be here, but your ethic and your drive and determination is.
Really?
And which was a bit like, oh, I'm not good enough to work here. But he was like, yeah, but the other side of things, it proved that I am, because of my drive and determination to succeed, basically.
I guess the idea as well that a lot of people say that hard work outbeats talent a lot of the time, in terms of like, you can have all the talent in the world, but you can do anything with it, like, where's that going to go? What made you want to go into agency side? Was it the exposure to a lot of different things? Was that an appeal?
Yeah, and it was like, I kind of didn't have, I knew maybe one day I'd go into like a brand, be it internal, but I think you need to learn your craft, like by doing gin one day, you're doing Cadbury's chocolate the next, you're doing toilet roll, like, loads of different projects, and like, obviously some have different merits and some, but I wanted to do loads of stuff, and working at somewhere like Design Bridge really just basically threw me into the deep end, and got exposure to all these like massive companies.
Yeah.
And I remember really early on going, I want to own my own alcohol brand one day.
Really?
Like, really early on, like junior designer level, like I'm going to own one. And my goal was to own a brand that one day Design Bridge would want to redesign.
That's cool. Was that because you thought you could do it better? Or was it just because you thought you could do something that's different?
I just thought it seemed like a really cool thing to do. I'm being honest.
Nothing too intense, but fair enough.
Yeah,
makes sense.
And I always wanted to be my own boss at some point.
Yeah.
I always knew that there was something. There was an itch to scratch. Yeah.
How did you find the pace of an agency world? Because you were in New York for a period of time, right?
Yeah. So then I was at the London office for about 4 years, and then when they opened up New York office, they basically were like sending designers and client services people and strategists basically to New York. So they didn't want to just open New York with loads of American people. They wanted to bring that culture with them, and drinking culture. No, it's but like that kind of like family vibe that Design Bridge was. Design Bridge was independent for like 30 years. They've since been bought out, but they had this amazing vibe and amazing family feel, and they wanted to bring that to New York. So I basically did 6 months in New York, at which point, they probably would offer me a job, but at the end I quit to do something different.
We'll get on to that bit. How did you find that pace though? That environment?
I loved it.
Yeah?
Absolutely loved it.
Do you think it's an environment that not everyone likes, in terms of like this whole kind of like agency, New York agency, there's cliches attached with it of like late nights and hard working, but like you learn so much in that environment, or did you?
I learned more in the first 3 months than I did in 3 years of studying.
Really?
100%.
What was the biggest, I guess, challenge in that period of your career? Was it keeping up with the pace?
No, I was pretty good at that. And I think it was just different creative directors have different. In agency, there was, I think, there was probably 10 creative directors, and different creative directors. You're working with especially the team that I was in, you're working with different ones like all the time, and some have different styles, and some are very like laid back and like, yeah, well, you know, we need this much time, and then some are like, you're not allowed to go home until it's finished. And I think it's just managing those different kind of personalities as well in that agency, because there's so many people. There was like 300 people when I started there.
Yeah,
like,
that's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot. I guess at that point you were working with some of the biggest brands in the world, from what you've said, with Smirnoff and Guinness. I think you did some work with as well.
Yeah.
What did you learn from working with big brands so early on, and maybe something you look back now owning a slightly smaller brand for now?
Storytelling, I would say, is number one thing I learned. It's about something can look beautiful and taste great, but if it doesn't have a good story behind it, then people are not going to buy into that. And I think it's a really good way of using design to tell that story. I mean, going back to Vinca, but that's why we chose one vineyard and one place for all the wines to come from, because we wanted a place to call home as a brand, because then we can tell that story. Then it gets like deeper, that we're like, you know, I mean, neither of the founders are all from Sicily, but we now have this like tie to Sicily, and it like it helps bring depth to the story. And yeah, everything that we do, like it's telling that story to the consumer, and not just looking good and tasting good.
Yeah, I guess outside of Vinca, do you think there's a brand that are doing that particularly well, that storytelling piece that you were maybe working with at the time?
Well, I think when we did the Guinness rebrand, I mean, I wasn't on, like the main team, but like the team's idea was to put the love and attention and the detail back into the harp, because years and years and years of rebrands had basically, I don't know if you remember, but like if you think back, the harp of the Guinness was just completely stripped, single colour, and
it was just like a little squiggle.
It was literally just like a squiggle by the end of it. And the creative directing and the design team at Design Bridge were like, let's put the love and the story back into it. So they're like, they even had like a harp made and then they used that to like build the logo from an actual harp, and all of these little nuances that, yeah, probably your average Joe watching the Six Nations isn't going to care about, but it is something about, it was that level of craft and that level of story, injecting that back into at such an integral time for the brand as well, because craft beer's booming. Like,
when was this? Do you remember kind of
this? It was one of the last projects I worked on, and I left in 2017.
Oh, right. So it's not that long ago, necessarily.
Yeah. And
they decided to do that because they were losing that connection with audiences. Yeah,
I think so. And part of a good rebrand is that no one notices. So yeah, when Design Bridge rebrand Vinca, I hope no one notices. Yeah, that's it.
I think they will. So you said you quit. Why did you quit?
I got offered a chance of a lifetime to basically go and be a music photographer on Ed Sheeran's Divide Tour.
Mm-hmm. And that made you quit?
And that made me quit, yeah.
Why did you think it was... Obviously, we know why it's opportunity of a lifetime in so many ways, but did you not think, I've got a career here, I might have a big future here, that maybe I'm taking a big gamble on?
In the meeting with Kasia from Design Bridge New York, I said, I'm coming back in a year, by the way. And she said, no, you're not. Because she didn't believe me.
Why did you think you were coming back in a year?
I literally thought I was going to go and do it for a year, have some fun, do another different creative thing by being a photographer and learning a different craft, and then coming back to Design Bridge. But yeah, I didn't do that in the end. It caught the touring bug and ended up staying on the road with Ed for 2.5 years.
And I guess it's worth saying how you got that gig and how that kind of gave it about, right?
Yeah, so yeah, long story short, but me and Ed go way back. We've been friends since we were really young, and his tour was going through New York at the time, and I was working in New York, and we got a bit drunk, and he was basically like...
a lot of big decisions happen in your life around alcohol.
They do.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's why we're not working on an alcohol-free one. Because keep it straight. But and he was like, "Oh, why don't you come on tour?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then he was like, "No, come and do photography and basically shoot the live shows, shoot the behind the scenes. It's someone I can trust as well."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not a photographer. I'm a graphic designer."
I was going to say, could you take photos? Were you taking loads of photos?
Really bad photos. I was kind of like, I went to uni in Falmouth, and I was that kind of like hipster kid with a fixed gear and a film camera that I didn't know how to use. And it's so hilly in Falmouth, you can't ride a fixed gear either. So, but yeah, so I knew the basics of photography, but I'd never done it professionally. And so, I quit my job at Design Bridge, and 3 weeks later flew out to Australia, where I met the tour. And then that's at the point where it started stadiums as well.
Right.
So it'd been gone through the arena run and then started doing stadiums. And then I was there with my Fujifilm X100F, just going, fixed 35mm, just going, I've got the wrong kit here. And basically, but it was great for that camera was great for kind of behind the scenes point and shoot, like day to day, like fun. And then I basically just slowly built on my kit, built on my skill set. And just, I then, in the first month, a little bit like about when I started being a designer, like I was like, I want to be the best at this. Like I want to be, Ed's giving me this opportunity, which is absolutely nuts. And I don't want to just be a hanger-oner here.
Did you feel a lot of pressure at that point? Because obviously, your pals from back in the day.
Yeah.
Did you feel a lot of pressure, like making sure you deliver as much as, I'm sure there wasn't that like high intense environment that you had at the agency, but there's probably a level of being like, I want to make sure I do a good job on this.
Yeah, it wasn't so much like delivering the creative because it was very loose. It was like, document what I'm doing. Whereas so that was good. But it was basically, after a while, I started then getting interested in tour photographers and started following loads of different touring photographers like Sam Neill, massive inspiration of mine. Like he shoots for Steve Aoki and, some other people like that. But like, I was like, I want to be as good as those guys. And then just threw myself in the deep end really. And the tour then went from Australia up to Japan, and then I bought, got my first Sony, realized that the fixed 55mm wasn't going to cut the mustard. And then slowly as that tour developed, I developed as a designer, as a photographer as well. So, just knowing, I think when you're doing it, it was probably about 3-4 shows a week.
Really?
And if you're doing that 3 or 4 times for 2 hours, you're going to get better. And especially if you want to get better, I would say.
Is it hard to stay creative in those shows? Because it's the same set, I guess, for you. You must know all the words, right? Like, and all that kind of stuff.
I know all the words per song on, and I'll lip sync my. Yeah,
we might test you on that later. But like for you, I guess from a creative perspective, you've gone from working in kind of the commercial space to now working in like very pure artistic formats, right? Where you're there to document photos and capture atmosphere. Like it must be, as much as it sounds brilliant, I want to find out more about it. Like it's also quite a big creative challenge after show 10.
Yeah, and I think I was trying to bring what I knew from design to photography. So it was about storytelling. It wasn't just, I think this is probably where a few event photographers get it wrong, or live shooters, is that all they're doing is taking pretty pictures of that artist.
Yeah.
But actually, I think what people want to see is like, what was the crowd like? Because the show is the same, nearly the same for artists like day in, day out.
Yeah.
But the crowd is different every single night, and the vibe is so different. Like,
really?
It can be, like you can get crazy, just super crazy crowds. And then so I would then always turn the camera onto the crowds, which would then get you get amazing pictures of like people like in the audience like enjoying the show or like getting engaged, which happens like so much at shows. And you just like, so then I started building these kind of carousels for Instagram. So it wasn't like one nice picture of Ed on a stage in an interesting place. It was like we built these carousels that would like flow through, so you could scroll it and it was like crowd and Ed, and then like a proposal, and then there was like the place that we were in, the stadium, because like every stadium is, they're kind of, some of them are similar, but a lot of them are really different. And so then just telling that story of the whole night, not just a pretty picture of Ed, or whatever artist I'm shooting, basically.
And was it one of those moments in that experience that was particularly like holy shit moment in terms of like amazing or challenging or anything like that?
I think the first, when we started, we did the crowd shot where Ed would turn to face me, and then I would take a picture of him in front of the whole crowd. Yeah. And the first time I did that, I absolutely shat myself because I was getting on stage, obviously, like... Oh,
you're upstage, right? So you're right at the back.
I was right on the back, but I had to walk up the steps, and then suddenly there's like 80,000 people there. Like, and then Ed's turning around at me going like that, and I'm just like, yeah, that was pretty nuts. But it was so fun to do. Like, traveling the world was one thing, but traveling the world with like basically one of my, like a group of my best mates, because I wasn't the only one of Ed's friends or one of our friends that was on tour. There was someone worked in catering, one worked in tour management. Amazing. There was me doing photography, there was Nick doing videography. So basically, like, imagine taking 5 of your schoolmates, and obviously one of them becomes one of the biggest global music artists in the world, and then basically touring around together. Like, it was that. And I feel so honoured to have done that with Ed and his team. Like, it's it was a once in a lifetime experience.
For sure. Did you learn a lot about kind of like work ethic, I guess? Because I guess, you know, stadium tours, global tours, are so much work that goes into just making those happen, as much as they always look flawless and amazing. But like the crews behind them, the teams behind them, the production behind it, like every small little jigsaw that obviously feeds into like running businesses as you do now. Like, there must be so much you must have experienced very quickly from being like a kind of employee in an agency that's fast paced and going into like a moving circus, as they often call it, that's just like constantly trying to find creative perfection. Did you learn a lot in that process?
I think definitely seeing the beast that it had become. Like, you know, it started off with when we're talking about Ed, but like, you know, it was him and a guitar, and then suddenly it's, you know, him and a guitar, but with like 80 crew and like, you know, in a stadium. But I think the biggest influence for me from starting this business was actually Ed, from age 16 when he left school, and his work ethic was like nuts, and it still is today. Like, he was just like so determined, like to just work so hard to get to where he wanted to be. And I'm sure he would admit this now, like he wouldn't be here or wouldn't be where he was today if he hadn't worked incredibly hard and sacrificed a lot. Like, you know, there was that one when he first moved to London, he did like 300 gigs in a year. Like, it was just like this crazy, just
in the early days.
In the early days, yeah, it was this crazy work ethic just to keep going. And even today, like last year, I was in a studio with him for a little bit, and he's still just writing. Like, he hasn't stopped. And I think that has rubbed off on me massively, that doing anything is hard. Like, willing something into existence is like a brand or a music artist or whatever it is near on impossible. And you're not going to be able to do that if you're turning up at work at 9 and you're leaving at 5 and you're going back to home to watch Netflix. And I think that you need that, like, that drive and determination is definitely rubbed off on me. Like,
do you think that's even outside of like owning something? Do you think it's if you're trying to get someone in your career, or you're trying to pursue something that's meaningful? Like, it's about that?
I think I definitely cared a little bit less when I was working for someone else.
Fair enough. What was life on the road like for you? Was it pretty draining mentally?
I loved it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved it. It was, you know, you can't, there's no point in like lying. It was amazing. But I think there comes a time, I think if you do it for so long, you know, you miss friends' birthdays, you miss people having kids, you miss, you miss friends' weddings, like if you're the other side of the world. I think that there's so much positives to doing it, especially the situation I was in, because it was like, you know, that first one as well with Ed was, you know, following one of my best mates around. But yeah, you can only do it for so long, I would say. I think.
Because after Ed, you were working with other artists as well, right? And that was the whole point for you about trying to become really good at it. And maybe outside of the relationship you had with Ed, obviously that must get thrown around quite a lot in terms of you work so closely together and your friends, but you were trying to be more than that and be, you know, put your stamp on the industry a little bit, right? Is that, am I right?
Yeah, totally. I think that Ed gave me the kind of like the intro to it, and like he gave me the, you know, I wouldn't have done it without him. I wouldn't have changed career paths without him. But then when I started doing it, I was like, fuck, I want to be the best at this. And then I was like, okay, Ed's given me the kind of opportunity to do this. Yeah. I want to do it for someone else that I didn't go to school with, because obviously that's pretty, you know, that's pretty lucky.
Yeah.
So I worked really hard, especially in the last year, sort of kind of honing my craft as a photographer, like, you know, and then suddenly reaching out to other artists and putting my portfolio together and saying, like, you know, obviously it's a lot easier when you've shot for Ed. People are going to like pay attention to you. Yeah. But then I started working with Lewis Capaldi end of 2019. Worked with him a bunch in his theatre tour, and then into his arena tour, and then obviously COVID hit. But for me, getting that second artist under my belt with Lewis was like a massive moment for me, because it was like, oh, I'm good enough to do this. And Lewis is like huge as well. And it was like, I have honed my craft so much that another artist has asked me to do the same thing for them. Yeah. And he's not my friend from school. Like, he's a stranger. And I think with it is, for any tour photographers that are watching this, that want to be it, like, it is 90% of it is you get on with the artist.
Really?
Because you're in their personal space like the whole time, and you have to be able to read people. Like, I'm sure you get it as well, like pointing a camera in someone's face. Like,
the amount of mistakes I made back in the day of like, I don't know whether you're working with like a brand or you're working with an actor or something like that, and you just like you don't judge that actually like now's the bit where they want to be left alone or whatever it would be. Like I used to shoot music videos back in like really back in the day, like early days of starting what is now 303, and like even music videos, which is a touch of like a creative expression, if you know what I mean. Like just getting that wrong or like speaking at the wrong time and all that kind of stuff. But I think you're so right about like it's about the relationship. You know, whoever you're working with creatively, it's really important. How was Lewis and Ed different? Or how were they different, sorry?
They were really different. Like, obviously, I'm sure Lewis wouldn't mind me saying this, but like that documentary that came out on Netflix, like all of that footage was me and Nick.
Was it?
Yeah. So we did all of that, like, for the documentary. But and watching that documentary was super hard for me because I've only been working for Lewis for about 6 months. I didn't see it. I just thought that it was like...
For those that maybe don't know what we're talking about, do you want to just expand a little bit on, obviously...
So the documentary was based about Lewis, and he used to have this kind of like weird little like tick, and it was like when he got anxious, he's since been diagnosed with Tourette's, and it's like, you know, that anxiety of live performing has, you know, brought this condition out of him, and he's now been diagnosed, and he's now dealing with it. But at the time, we just thought it was just nerves. Like,
really?
And I count Lewis as one of my friends now, and like it really pained me watching that documentary because it was like, why did none of us see that he was really struggling? And it was,
So you were recording all the footage that was in that documentary,
but just we were just doing the Instagram, the tour diary videos, like everything that goes on. We didn't know it was going to be eventually used for the doc,
packaged up.
But yeah, we obviously did it because it was cool.
Yeah.
Credit on Netflix.
No, for sure. And so when you say they were really different, was that in terms of like you were talking about connecting with them and having relationships with them as a kind of creative standing from the side? I guess you know Ed very well. You didn't know Lewis. Was that the biggest adjustment to go through?
I think so. Yeah. I think his team are so fun.
Really?
Like his whole team that he's got around them are like, some of the funnest guys. Like, I'm still friends with quite a few of them. Like
amazing.
But I remember the first night when I was on that tour bus.
This is with Lewis.
With like 14 Glaswegian guys, and then me and Freddie were the only English guys, and it was really hard to understand them because especially after like a bottle of Buckfast that I drank the first night, because
more booze, making good decisions.
More booze, well, that was a bad decision, drinking a bottle of Bucky, but yeah.
Wow. And so you did that up until COVID, and then COVID changed everything again for you. Another moment that changed. So what happened? Obviously COVID hits. Were you due to go on another tour?
Due to do Lewis's world tour. So the next stop was to be on Niall Horan's tour as a support act for Lewis. And it was starting in Nashville in April. And I remember the gig ending in Aberdeen, I think it was, and us being at the airport, really hungover.
Am I surprised? No?
Really, really hungover, that one. And then we saw loads of people with like masks on. This was like March 2020.
Yeah.
And we were just like, oh, is it really going to be a thing? And then we're like, nah, it'll blow over. And then we were like hugging each other and be like, see you in 3 weeks in Nashville, see you in a month. Like it'll, and then obviously the world changed.
Yeah.
And so I had to rethink what I was doing for my career, basically.
Did you never think that you'll stick it out for COVID and go back?
Well, no, because I was already working on another branding project. So it was a tequila brand. And that was kind of happening in the background. So when we would go away and tour for like 2 months, and I'd be home for a month, and I was working on this like, again, this premium tequila brand, which is still all ready to go. And Vinca is...
Was this just you?
No, this was me, Jack, and Charlie, the founders of Vinca. We were working on something like in the background, and I always knew that I wasn't going to tour forever, and I always wanted to, start an alcohol business, and it started life as a tequila. But we'd done some sketches for a canned wine brand in a pub in Tooting in the Wheat Sheaf about 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago now, but.
Well, like 2015, 2016?
Yeah, and we're me, Charlie and Jack, because we're all from friends from school, but all have really different skill sets. So like obviously I was a graphic designer. Jack was a wine buyer. And then Charlie worked in like tech and sales basically. So
he's the cool one. He's the tech guy.
He's the tech guy.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I'm the drunk guy. And then we basically always knew that it actually started off being me and Jack, but then we were struggling and then I caught up with Charlie, and I was, I grew up living next door to Charlie, like age 3 years old. That's how long I've known Charlie. And we had this like meet up, hadn't seen him for a few months, and then I said, "Oh, me and Jack are working on this tequila thing," and then he was getting all excited, and then I didn't say anything, but then the next day I rang Jack and I was like, Charlie's the missing link. Like Charlie's the third guy that we need in the co-founding team. Guy. We need someone with sales, I think, experience, because at that time I'd never sold a thing in my life, but now for the business I'm head of sales. So I mean that's a full circle moment. But yeah, at that time I was like, I don't know how to sell.
Yeah,
I think really I've been selling stuff since I was young. I think like even when you're working on a design project, you're still selling that new rebrand, or you're still selling that new piece of packaging. Like I think I just hadn't put two and two together that actually I had been selling for ages.
So COVID hits. There's surely a little bit of a buffer period of time where you don't really know what you're going to do.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And then straight in.
And then Jack sent me a text saying, "How about that canned wine project then?" So we basically decided to park the tequila. Tequila was getting...
Why was that? Why did you park the tequila?
Because the plan for tequila was the kind of like launch model was basically to go into high-end cocktail bars and work off the on-trade for the first like 2 years. And like trickle down approach. And then by like year, it wasn't like we're all going to do it at the same time as all having our careers, and it was going to be a bit, but it massively depended on the on-trade, and that didn't exist anymore. So it was like pivot moment. Everyone's drinking in parks. Let's do canned wine, basically.
Was that I was going to ask you, why wine in a can? Like, really, what I know, kind of, I guess, why you guys have gone in the way you have to the canned wine market. Sorry,
yeah.
But why did you want to go from tequila to wine in a can? It seems like a weird.
Yeah, so
it's alcoholic, which is good.
So when we were talking about what that brand was for me and Jack, Jack had been so Jack's background was a wine buyer for 10 years. So his job was basically to travel around the world to all these amazing vineyards and then bring, like, either do fine wine dealing or bulk wine dealing for like major supermarkets in the UK. And he basically went to America, that's 6 or 7 years ago, and saw canned wine. Like that's kind of where it started, was in America. And he said like, "Oh, it's really cool. Like it's this like convenient format, and like it's like really booming over here, and we could do that." And then with that tequila thing, which was a bit of a vanity project, I would say, we actually realized, your expertise is wine. It's not tequila. Like my expertise is brand. Your expertise is wine. Like we can do this better than anyone else because we have you. And I think it was that kind of light bulb moment, was just like, let's just do canned wine, like, and let's do it better than anyone else has done it.
What was that early day feeling like? I always ask this to sort of founders of brands, because I still remember like starting the thing I have today, and I've started some other things, and like that naivety, that kind of like...
You've stolen the word. I was just about to say absolutely naive.
But it's great, isn't it? You just don't think there's going to be any problems.
Yeah. Well, there still are no problems.
But what did it actually feel like with two... So you've got two co-founders, the three of you. You've all known each other for at least, 25-ish years. I'm guessing everyone's age there. But 25 years. It's just pure excitement, and like we can take on the world and it's going to be great.
Yeah, it literally is that. And it's really exciting, and it's really a little bit scary. But at that point, it's not really scary, because especially when we started, we wanted to launch it ourselves. So we self-funded the first 2 or 3 batches because we wanted to prove the concept, not be an idea on paper. We wanted to be like, look, this is going to be the brand, this is how it's going to look, and this is how it's going to taste, and these are the stockists we've already done. So the first batch we launched, sold out within like 4 weeks. Bear in mind, it was like...
are you selling at this point?
Just Shopify, and then to some... like local delis and bottle shops and breweries and stuff.
Because this is COVID, where like they're doing like the pop-up vibes, right?
Yeah. And also the first batch, I think, was only 500 litres of, which is equates to about 2,500 cans. So like really...
It's not loads.
It's not loads. And yeah, we'd been hyping it with friends and family for so long that people just like really wanted to try what we were actually doing.
Yeah.
And then the second batch we did was slightly bigger. I think it was like 2,000 litres. Again, it was like self-funded. So it was like, and then after those like first 6 months, we then went to basically look for investors. But after we already had sales data, and we also had like brand mirroring of what other brands in the category were doing, and and why we could do it better, and how we could do it differently as well. So
why did you want to do it that way? Because there's loads of brands that don't do it that way. They don't almost prove the concept, and they have an idea, they go and raise enough cash to do like 1 million litres and whatever. I mean, why did you feel it was important for the three of you to do it that way?
One, because we wanted to prove it to ourselves, I think, that it was a good idea.
Yeah.
And not like burn someone else's cash on a whim. And the other thing we were really interested with was retaining like equity. So
right.
Launching any product is like especially at scale, is massively like the money that you need in your account to do it is like pretty astronomical, especially like the scale that we're at now with doing like tankers. And
how big is a tanker?
26,000 litres.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's a lot. Just done like 5 of them. But we one, and I mean the saying is like, I'd rather own a smaller slice of a delicious cake than a big slice of a horrible cake. But we thought we could kind of do it both. We could kind of make a really delicious cake, but also carve out quite a large
cake and eat it a little.
Yeah, that we would own and retain. And it worked. It worked. I mean, the founders still, all 3 founders, we collectively own about 75% of the business. So, yeah.
Now, this stuff is delicious, and I'm not a wine guy, and I'm not just saying that because you're sat in the room. Like, it is nice. I think I've got the rosé, right? And you've got the white. How do you even start getting this kind of product in a can? Because I'm imagining you can't just put anything in a can and hopefully it tastes nice. Am I right?
Yeah, well, that's what we thought initially.
Okay.
But when we were doing sort of 500,000 litres at a go, it was kind of easier to... The pull-through was a lot more. But basically, the reason it tastes so good is Jack. Like, Jack's quit his job as like head of wine buying for one of the most prestigious kind of wine distributors in the country, in West London, to put his name against this can, and it had to be good enough to do that. And he also had his black book of vineyards across the globe is nuts. Like, he knew we weren't knocking on the front door of the vineyard that we use saying, hey, we're a canned wine brand and we want to use your wine. Like, he already had a relationship with them. And also he was very forward thinking in that not all wine should be put in a can. And different varietals should never ever ever be put in a can. Like,
why is that?
Well, his opinion is, and I kind of completely agree with him now, but like a big like oaky Chardonnay or a massive like Merlot or Sauvignon Blanc,
big bold flavors, basically.
Massive bold flavors are really accentuated in the can, and that's down to a couple of things. Like, one, obviously it's in the can format, but two, like, if you think about, and this is getting really wine geeky here now,
I'm kind of into it. Keep going.
You know how you have different wine glasses for different grape varietals. Mm-hmm. So you have a big wide rimmed glass for like a Cab Sauv. That's because it's knocking the wine into different parts of your mouth.
Right.
Whereas that, when you're drinking straight from the can, is knocking it straight into the centre, which is the really sensitive part of your tongue. So his opinion, and I'm probably giving away our Vinca secrets here, was use grape varietals that were really light and really refreshing and really drinkable and not massive bold flavours, because if you're putting a Sauvignon Blanc straight and drinking straight from the can and you're just putting it straight into the centre of your tongue, then it's just going to like feel like it's just a bit nuts. And so he was adamant that the wines that we chose and the grape varietals that we chose had to be designed for the can themselves, and not just take a bottle or take a bulk wine off the shelf and put it in a can. And I think that's where we differ.
Is it hard to convince wineries to put their product in a can?
Yes.
How hard?
Especially Italian and Sicilian.
I was going to say, why Italian, and how hard was it to get the right wine? So I imagine there was a lot of tasting that happened between the three of you.
Loads of tasting, and a lot of it was pouring wine into cans and then drinking it from the can as well. So we would we weren't just getting a nice sample bottle and pouring it into a glass and drinking it. Like, that's not a good. I mean, I've now poured decanted this into a glass. Because, we're not animals. We're not at a music festival, so it makes sense. But we have a lot of kind of stuff like that. And the reason we chose Sicily was Jack was adamant that he wanted the whole brand to be organic. Right. And the sales figures and the kind of stats back that up. Like, canned wine is in serious growth phase at the moment, huge growth, and so is organic wine. Like, Majestic announced that they've seen a year-on-year rise of 22% of organic wine sales last 3 years. So Jack was like, I think that, one, that will step us away from the competition because it's another USP that we're completely certified organic. But two, he thinks it's massively growing, and it's also really good for your sustainability. You're not using any chemicals. It's a super.
What is the difference between organic wine and not organic wine? Because for the people, and I'm going to include myself in this category. Yeah, it's all in a vineyard. So, what's the actual difference between organic and non-organic?
It's basically there's loads of different rules, but what it boils down to is that no pesticides are used. No chemicals are basically used. There's some rule about the not being able to water it, but I can't remember what that is, so you have to ask Jack.
Fair.
But basically it's just grown organically, so there's no chemicals that are used in it, in the growing of it, in the harvesting of it, in the preparation of the wine, anything, any stage. We even have to get our office in Bermondsey organic tested, so we're not using any even though there's no production happening there, just drinking. They come and they do inspections twice a year, where they check that the cleaner that we're using in the office is all certified organic. Yeah, it's
the office did detergent.
Detergent, and everything down to our shippers and our canning facility. Every single part of the journey has to be certified.
All organic.
All organic.
I mean, that's crazy.
Which is it's really hard and really annoying.
It's Jack's fault.
It's completely Jack's fault.
So why did Jack? So Jack was we want to do that because the product that's coming from an organic wine would suit the can.
No, he basically just thought it would elevate our USPs, and also he was a massive fan of organic wine.
So it's also Jack's fault as well.
It was all Jack's fault, but the reason it tastes so good is also Jack's fault, which is positive. But then basically Sicily, is why we chose Sicily, is because they are years ahead of organic agriculture. So on average, look at I think it's if you look at France, another massive winemaking region, I think it's about 8% is certified organic. Sicily is 45%.
Yeah.
The reason is that they're massively ahead of their organic agriculture, but they're also, the climate really lends itself because our vineyards are literally right on the coast, so you get the sea breeze. So as soon as you've got areas that have constant sea breeze and all that kind of thing, there's a way less need for pesticides and all that kind of stuff, because you haven't got this stagnant kind of environment. You've got this amazing environment for making organic wine, and that's why Sicily is the perfect place to call home as a brand.
Love it. Now, you've spoken a lot about Jack and obviously your other co-founders as well. How important is it for you to have co-founders? Why do you think? I know I can kind of understand that you've got the friendship with the guys and you all do different things, but it feels like without them you wouldn't even try and do what you're doing.
I wouldn't be sat here right now with you. It's so hard.
Yeah.
And I'm not even, I'm not trying to scare people off from starting a business, because you totally should, but it is so hard. And I had a couple of other friends that started businesses, and I saw, one of my really good friends started a digital marketing agency.
Don't do that.
Terrible idea. And she had a co-founder, and then another one of my friends started some solo stuff, and it just looked quite lonely and really, just really hard. And I also knew that I had skill sets, but I did not have the full picture. And you can hire people, and you can, it is obviously possible to do it as a solo founder. But when I have bad days, hopefully Jack and Charlie aren't having bad days. I mean, today's been quite a stressful day, but maybe we'll get into that. But it's just having that support, and also as you're growing, and as you're being really nimble, and as you're being really kind of scattergun, a bit crazy. You can just pick up things I'm just going to do that, and that. And also which happened tiny bit last year, is that we massively upped our production. We had incurred some costs that we didn't realize, because some shipping delays, and then we didn't pay ourselves for a month. And you can't ask employees to do that, but you can ask co-founders to do that. So, yeah.
How do you find it with three of you?
It's always pretty good, because I think if we were 3 graphic designers doing it,
Oh God,
it would have failed. I think if we were 3 wine buyers, it would have failed. And I think if we were 3 tech and sales people, it would have failed. But I think because we have such different career journeys previous, and all quite different personalities as well, I would say, like, I think it works really well that we have clear defined areas. So anything design, photography, creative, brand is me. Then anything wine and operations is like Jack. Like, we can argue to the cows come home, but if like Jack says like no, it has to be like this. Like,
is that how you've done it? You've made sure that everyone can have their opinions, but we own our shit.
Yeah.
Because I guess without that, it's just a bit of a free for all.
It's just chaos.
Yeah. Because also, the reason why I asked you about 3 is that I've met loads of co-founders of just 2 of them, and like that's obviously quite common, particularly in your space. Like, you know, even on this podcast, we've had a lot of kind of duos, which always kind of is like the creative one and the finance one is kind of like the common blend you see, which I think is a great blend. Yeah. But for 3, it must be like a bit of a weird dynamic sometimes, particularly like from a branding perspective as a creative, when you're building something maybe like the packaging and the other 2 don't even like it. I don't know if that's ever happened, but like there must be weird moments where it's 2v1 on some stuff, but if you respect each other, I guess it works.
I think we respect each other. And also I think the other thing is that if you're 2 co-founders, I mean, Jack was on holiday last week and me and Charlie were disagreeing about something.
Calling Jack.
But like we were laughing it off that we're actually disagreeing. He said to me, I'm really glad that you think like that, but I completely disagree with you. And I was like, same. Like, but actually with the 3, Jack then comes in and is like, shall we do this? And Jack's like, yes. Or he's like, no. And like, or like that dynamic happens quite a bit. That actually it's not one opinion versus one opinion. It's like one opinion versus one opinion. But then there's a third person that is going to basically go, oh, actually, let's go down the chaotic route that Zach wants to do. Or let's go down the more sensible route that Charlie wants to do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's cool. They're going to hate they're going to love the next bit. You're going to hate this bit. Okay. What's your favourite thing about Charlie?
Favourite thing about Charlie? It was kind of what I'm saying then. Like, he's, I think you might hate me for saying this, but he's the slightly more sensible one that questions everything. Okay. But that sounds like a negative, but it's so positive to have someone that is actually really thinking and really questioning, because genuinely, if I didn't have him, I would have driven this business. I don't think it would be here today. I think
he's almost a sensible one for you, where you're thinking big and creative, whatever. He just goes, wait a minute, let's make sure we're doing this the right way.
Yeah, he likes looking at spreadsheets and stuff.
Nice. Lucky mate. And what's your favourite thing about Jack?
He's got the nose of a sommelier.
Very important for you guys. Very, very important. Yeah. I do want to ask you a little bit about the branding process, because this was all you. And I mean, just slightly training.
And a little bit of help.
And a little bit of help. Okay.
Because
so you don't take the full credit for
No, I can't take the full credit. Okay, I started working on it myself, and I was so in my head with it that it was like the hardest brief in the world. It was like, you've designed all these brands, or done all these rebrands for these huge brands, but now do it for yourself. And it's just like, and then when you're working on it and you can't really get out of it, so
because you branded a lot of stuff, and I know some stuff you have branded, even for like going back to like Ed. Are you okay to mention what some of that stuff is?
Yeah. So I did, as well as the photography for Ed, I also designed his last 2 album campaigns. So his Equals, which is the one in came out just after lockdown with all the butterflies. That was actually shot in my kitchen. Funny story, and this is absolutely clang and name dropping, but he got Damien Hirst to send me some butterflies from his collection.
Really?
To my house in lockdown.
They're like the actual butterflies, like the ones he makes?
No, as in like the kind of like I guess they're dead butterflies, but they've been like preserved and been dried.
Oh, like pin them and stuff.
Yeah. So I got this box through from Damien Hirst's studio, and then I basically had loads of fun in lockdown, basically setting up like all my cameras and shooting. I wanted there to feel the whole idea with when I first listened to the album, and Ed definitely helped with like the creative direction on it a little bit, but it was about like, this album was quite different to any previous albums. It was like, you know, it had like Bad Habits was the opening single. It was pretty like poppy and pretty like movie, and especially
It's
after,
very different as well, right? Like from other stuff.
yeah, and especially after COVID, it was like this moment of like everyone wanted to be out again, and everyone felt like they'd been cocooned, and everyone wanted to like things. So it was like these butterflies, but then I shot them through loads of light prisms, so it makes them look like they're moving on a still piece of thing. So that was the idea behind that. And then I did the last campaign with Subtract as well with my really good friend Jenny Green, who's an artist. She did the illustration, and then we kind of like worked together on it.
So up until Vinca, you've been making like everything from commercial branding to like proper artistic stuff, and now you've got to brand your own thing. Yeah, that's probably the hardest thing you've done.
Yeah, definitely. So I shout out Kate Snell, who's my friend, who's an illustrator, and Olly Rowe, who is an amazing designer that I used to work with a little bit, and basically went to them and I was like, look, I'm trying to do this brand, like I need help, like, and like I can't quite see where it should be going in this direction. And then me, Olly and Kate basically worked on it, and then basically developed it, and down to them that basically they managed to steer me in the direction that I wanted it to go. And then my friend Charlie Davis, who's another illustrator, then came on board and then re-illustrated some bits for it as well. So it was like, it wasn't just me. Like I couldn't have done it on my own.
They're like, yeah, it was us.
But yeah, we wanted it to feel.
I was going to say, creative question, like how would you describe the branding feel? Like where were you trying to go to?
Premium but obtainable is like our brand messaging. Is like we want to be. That's down to the way it tastes, the way it looks, and also like the price point on shelf.
Yeah.
Like we set on shelf of Co-op for $2.99, 2 for a fiver. So we're like really obtainable from a price point, but also we wanted the brand to feel sort of modern but established. So that's why, I mean, the background to the packaging is like very kind of like vectorized, but then we've used like a sort of like a serif font, a modern serif font for the logo and stuff. So it makes it feel like grounded, but it's like modern. And that was kind of the idea behind it. It was like, we wanted it to feel like it'd been around for ages, like in the wine world, but it was like a rebirth of something new.
Was there another direction you were thinking of going down?
No, but it's had a few different like iterations to it, but it's basically stayed the same.
And for you with the boys, was it like, this is what I think it is? Were you really leading that direction? They were like, yeah, okay, we'll just go with that.
Now Jack's definitely got and I'm sure Charlie won't be saying this, Jack's definitely got a really creative eye on him.
Really?
And yeah, he definitely was massively involved in like how it was going to look and stuff. But at the end of the day, anything like that basically would be like, oh, I think this, but what do you think? Yeah, so they trust my opinion on the brands that I've done before and the work I've done before. And like, yeah, at the end of the day, it kind of is my
does a pretty decent work. So like,
thank you.
I think they can give you your props on that one. So you create the brand. It's obviously COVID, and we've skipped around a little bit there, but getting it into people's hands was the first focus. And then from there, you're trying to grow it, and there's just 3 of you, right? It's a lean team just trying to grow it. What's that process, and how did you approach that? Yeah.
So once we launched, and obviously a lot of it was basically like, we knew we were going to keep it really lean because at the start of it was self-funded. So it was like, there was no budget to hire anyone, let alone pay ourselves at the start. So we were all working our kind of previous jobs. So I was doing bits and pieces of touring. But I was also doing freelance for my old design agency, Design Bridge. And then Charlie was working for Just Giving as head of digital sales. And Jack
worked there for a long time, didn't he?
Yeah, he worked there for ages. Yeah. And then Jack was working for Robeson. And then, we like, after like the first 3 months, I think me and Charlie quit. Sort of, and then Jack was still working for Robeson, and we were like, and then Jack basically started. Robeson started, starting to look at another canned wine brand, as in like developing their own, and then
because he's working for a buyer, right? So his job is basically to bring in opportunities to the firm.
Yeah, and also they produced as well. So they have a urban winery. It's really cool. It's called London Crew, or London Cellars. I can't remember. But anyway, they started working on their own canned wine, and then Jack told us, and we were like, ooh, it's getting a bit close now. Like, I think you've got to quit your job.
So he was working on Vinca at that point?
Vinca was about to launch, basically.
And then he was like on the side.
And then Robeson were like, oh, we're going to start working on our own canned wine range. And then Jack obviously knew everything, how to do it, and then felt that was a conflict of interest. And he loved it there. And like, his boss, Cliff Roberson, was like a massive mentor to him, and he was like, I never want to be in a position where I'm like fucking anyone off.
Yeah.
So I'm basically gonna like, at this point, I'm just gonna hold my hands up and say like, I'm leaving to launch my own.
Because there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's just how you do it.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that.
Of course, but you just got to do it the right way.
You got to do it the right way, and he wanted to do it the right way because he wants to still be able to have that relationship that he had for 10 years working under someone that he really respected.
And also, the industry is small.
Yeah,
so it's
really
it's important to like leave a long-lasting impression and stuff, right? So what was the goal at this point for you guys? Were you thinking, right, let's get into the supermarkets, let's get everywhere? There's three of you, so there's only so much that can happen. As much as I know you guys like to move the needle.
We thought that with Jack's working relationship with Marks and Spencer's and Waitrose, we would be launching there in 2 months' time.
So you're like, Jack, come on, mate, come on to work.
You used to work for them, let's do it. We also, at the start, we thought it was going to be a massive direct-to-consumer business as well. We thought that 50% of our revenue was going to be D2C. So
because you launched in COVID.
Because we launched in COVID, and that kind of skewed everyone's numbers, didn't it, really?
Yeah.
Now it sits about 6% of our revenue, but it's still a really good channel for us to have because it's like our direct line to people that love the brand, that we can talk to them directly and we can offer them deals and we can do stuff. And like, yes, we're never going to lose that arm, even though that it doesn't produce that much
makes sense.
revenue. But then, basically that first year after we'd all quit our jobs was basically founders with wine in our rucksacks, pounding the pavement, hustling, basically doing just going to breweries and delis and bottle shops and
see, everyone always says this, right, in terms of like, this is the process I've heard a lot, but what does that actually look like on a day? You wake up in the morning, you fill the rucksack up, and you just go and you're on Google Maps just finding places.
So what I would do is I'd select an area, say like near where I live, and I'd basically go, okay, there, and then I'd walk in, introduce myself with cans, and basically like introduce what we're doing and like tell the story. And the first couple of times I did that, I was shitting myself because I've never made a sale in my life. But actually, those small independent shops also are normally run by the owner.
Yeah.
And they're interested in your story as well as you're interested in their story.
Yeah.
And then the feedback you get is like really positive. Suddenly, like they're like looking at it, they're like, "Oh, this is brilliant," or and then I'll leave them a couple of cans and they taste it, and then they message me saying, "Oh, I want to stock it. Like, it's delicious." And like that kind of starts to snowball. And then we started like looking at bigger places, so like theatres, and we launched with an outdoor theatre in Suffolk really quickly, which did really good volume, and did a few festivals the first year as well. But then it basically hit a point where there's only really so much you can do as a founder team that you can't be out there like the whole time pounding the pavements. It like just doesn't work.
Like, I was gonna say, even with your like endurance from tour life, like, it must be pretty knackered.
Yeah, but it was just like, so we had to kind of pivot. And we're like, okay, we looked at like, okay, well, we need to work with distributors, and then we looked at our can price, and we were like, there's no margin for distributors because a distributor wants to take 20% basically.
Yeah.
So then that's at that point we raised some money to massively up our production, to bring our cost of goods down, so then we could work with distributors. And the first distributor we got, it was Vintage Roots. Shout out to them. They then got us listings in Able and Cole and Planet Organic in the end, and now Whole Foods. But that was our first like kind of step into distribution, like working with a route to market strategy of like, you can't do it all on your own, like not even from a time perspective, but also from a lot of these bigger customers will have contracts in place that they only buy through that one distributor, so you can't just go around everyone and shift around them and sell direct. Like, it doesn't work like that. But anyway, then that second year is kind of when we started working with distributors, and then we sort of took an aim at like aspirational stockists. Like we were like, hey, if we're a retailer, we're not going for the big five, but obviously, like, where would we be? And we were like, hey, well, let's go for Dalesford, let's go for Planet Organic, let's go for Whole Foods. But then we were like, okay, well, if we are a music venue, where are we going to go? Where are we going to go to? And if we're an airline, which airline is it? And so we were like British Airways, and then so we like took aim at British Airways, and then the first meetings were, so that was moving into like year 2. And then the first meetings for British Airways were sort of January. We launched on board all European flights by July. So, and then we would just pick a channel and go, what's the premium one of those? And we'd go after those before anyone else. Because there is definitely a snobbery with like, you know, if you get stocked in sort of a, you know, with someone that's not perceived to be as premium, that premium brand or that premium retailer or that premium airline isn't going to look at you because they're like, it's the same as like when we were looking at, you know, launching the tequila brand. Like we wanted to go to high-end cocktail bars first. If we'd been stocked in Wetherspoons, there's no way that a high-end cocktail bar that has 8 seats in it in Mayfair is going to stock you. Like, and I think there is that in all channels, in travel, in retail, in all of them. I think there's that snobbery, and I think that the way to go about it is to aim premium, aim high first, but obviously you have to back it up with a premium product. But then you can get that trickle down approach after a few years, which
work from the top and go down. I suppose
the top and go down.
Do you remember the first time someone told you they don't like the product?
Yeah, I hated it.
What did it actually feel like?
It was at London Wine Fair.
So you already remember it, don't you?
Yeah. And because it's a good story actually, because someone until that point, like a lot of the people I've been talking to was like small business owners and independents, and it was the first time we'd done London Wine Fair, which is like big prestigious wine event in Olympia, and someone didn't like it, and
did they say it to your face?
Yeah, so this is awful. And I got really upset. And then I said to afterwards, and then suddenly the day's like getting on with me. And then Jack was like, we're having a wine after the end. And he was like, are you okay? And I was like, oh, someone just said they didn't like my product. And then he was like, oh mate, it's the wine industry. That happened. It's so opinion based. Like it is so opinion based. And and I remember getting upset that like, I got my local deli in Hither Green, Good Hope, still won't stock my brand. And I used to get really because the wine bar doesn't like it. And it used to really upset me. And now it's just like, I haven't got time to think about those people because, got bigger fish to fry. And also, it is so opinion-based. Like, I mean, we once had one person at a trade show like, actually shout at us for putting wine in a can. They were like, how dare you? How dare you?
What do you do in those moments? Like, really? What
I was laughing at that guy. But, but that's kind of where we're taking... We haven't designed Vinca for those red trouser wearing West London wine snobs. We have designed Vinca for everyone.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the really early meetings in Noble Rot. You've been to that restaurant?
No.
Wine bar? Oh, it's amazing.
Is it?
Yes.
Where is it?
They've got one in Mayfair and one in, you're nodding, so where's the other one? Somewhere. There's 2 in London. They're absolutely insane. Food's amazing, wine's amazing. And I remember we were there, we had some cans, and there was these group of old wine men laughing at us, and I just thought, I'm going to absolutely show you that this is where this is going. Like this is where the future of wine is going, especially from a convenience standpoint. Like, it's some crazy stat. I think it's like 90% of wine purchases consumed within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So why do you have to age it in a bottle? It's made in stainless. It's made in stainless steel tanks.
Stick it straight in.
Yeah, stick it straight in the can.
Fair enough.
Quick, cut out the middleman. cut out the red trouser wearing middleman.
Fair enough. I mean, they can still try it, of course. They can still try it.
They can still try it. But I don't. I genuinely, wine is very opinionated, and not everyone is going to like your product, no matter what you do. And I think we're in year 3 now, and I now know that, and
you're getting there.
I'm now, it's fine.
Good.
It's fine with me.
20 minutes ago or so, you mentioned that it's been a stressful day.
Yeah.
Why has it been a stressful day?
Because our can manufacturer, who makes the empty cans, decided that they're not going to make this size of can anymore.
Well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
What you can do at it?
They make a slightly bigger can, but it means you have to underfill it slightly. And so that's what we're going to do. And it's a real pain because all of our boxes, our whole process is set up for this. And now we're going to have to redesign everything to be 5 millimeters taller.
How often does stuff like that happen? A stressful day in your life, how frequent is that?
Every day.
Even with the others?
I'm quite envious of people that have big teams of people that have operation directors and brand teams and marketing teams, because we've kept the team, just us three, really lean for a reason, for a strategy reason, because we want to turn a profit this year. And that's because all of the conversations we've been having with investors and big VC firms have said that most investors and a lot of people are looking at profitability and how they're going to get their money back, not looking at a future sale, not looking at a future acquisition, because
they're looking at dividends.
They're looking at dividends and how they're going to get paid their money back. And so we took the strategy, especially with the three skill sets that we had, is that we could do a lot of it in-house. But don't get me wrong, it's like super stressful. I wish we had a bit of a bigger team to deal with things like that. That, you know, our canning facility is not ringing me saying, "Oh, they're not going to make your cans anymore."
Yeah.
Even though the head of our DAG came up to our stand 3 weeks ago at Pro Wine and promised us that, you know, the supply would be there. And yeah, things like that happen. And it's head in hands moment for all of 30 seconds. And then it's like, okay, how do we change this?
Yeah.
And so we're on the phone to the canning facility saying we're going to move into 200 mils and then we're going to underfill, which isn't a problem. We've done it before. And it's actually what a lot of other brands, canned wine brands do.
Yeah.
Is, you know, they do use the 200s because they're more frequently made. But then before this, I was artworking how adding, 5 mil changes the design. So I was then artworking all of our cans to make sure that they're all in line and they will work, and to make it work. So
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, but if it was easy, everyone would do it.
There you go. What does the future look like? Where do you think this can go?
So we've 4x'd every year so far.
Every year?
Yeah, from the start.
Wow, congrats.
Thank you.
That's
and
mega.
This year we're on target to 10x because we've just won a massive airline contract. Thank you.
That's mega.
Found out last Thursday.
How long has that taken to win?
It's taken about 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, but I reached out on LinkedIn.
You're joking.
Big up LinkedIn. It's a really powerful tool. I'm not sponsored. But yeah, reached out to the wine buyer of this certain airline just at the perfect time and said, we're actually looking at it right now. Send us samples. So we sent samples and they said, wow, this is like better than anything else we've tasted in a can.
Does it ever trip you out, that kind of stuff, in terms of just like if you didn't send the email?
Yeah, massively. And then I get like anxiety that I'm not sending enough outreach.
I always get it. This is exactly what I get. But just with general stuff like not send the message, not send the email, not have the conversation, like that stuff. It's so, when you think about in this situation, because that one thing is going to 10x, basically 10x company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's a massive growth for us. Like, and also from our perspective, it's 2 million cans annually launching in June. And as well as like amazing for our revenue, what it also is it's 2 million people that are being given our wine on board an aircraft. And that's another reason why we concentrate on that kind of travel industry, is that one, sustainability is massive in that industry. Like, these weigh less than the plastic alternatives and obviously is way more sustainable and infinitely recyclable, all that kind of stuff. But the other side of it is that most of the time when you're going on holiday and when you're flying, you're having a good time. So just like where brands do festival partnerships and big activations of festivals, is because you're trying to get that pull through of reminding, putting your brand next to a good time. And I think that's why the travel sector works really, really well for that, of like holidays and good time, good vibes. And so that's why we're putting a lot of energy into launching that. And obviously the volumes are pretty game changing as well.
Yeah, for sure. And is that a big focus for the next sort of 12, 24 months? Have you got anything else coming down the line?
Yeah, we're launching on 2 train lines as well in the UK.
Wow.
Which again, probably not maybe the holiday thing, is more commuter, but again, it's really good because it's like captive audience. Like you're the only wine brand served there. And then we have some other really cool things like launching with Booker. So all of their
cash and carry.
Yeah, all of their cash and carries. Wow. Launching all 3 SKUs in there. Launching John Lewis at Christmas with our Christmas cracker. So we did a wine tasting Christmas cracker that's last year we basically just made, put together ourselves, and then John Lewis saw it and loved it, and now we're launching with them for Christmas. And maybe some other retailers that we're talking to at the moment. So
some secret stuff. You mentioned 3 SKUs. Any plans for more?
Yeah, we're going to be launching some new stuff.
Some new stuff. Very secretive. I like it. And I guess the final question for me really is, you guys are 3-4 years into this now? Like, it's been
2.5 years.
2.5 years. Wow. It's been a process. What do you think it takes to build a brand like Vinca?
It takes grit and determination, really good team behind it. No one told me that I wouldn't sleep. And then when you start a business, you dream about it. So even when you are sleeping, you're still actually working. And there's been times where I've actually woken up in the middle of the night and written notes on my phone of something that I've dreamt about the business, which is just nuts. And no one tells you that. So be careful. But no, it's, drive and determination and just like, and passion as well. Like,
yeah,
I love this, like so much. Like, yeah, we've gone through like my kind of history of my work, but like from 22-year-old Zak, 10 years on, I wanted to start an alcohol brand and I wanted to start a global alcohol brand. And Jack always wanted to work in the industry of wine and he absolutely massive passion. And Charlie also just had a passion for doing his own thing as well. And I think if you don't love it, then don't do it.
I think it's impossible if you don't love it.
Yeah.
Generally. Like, from the conversations I've had and my experiences, if you don't love it, it's actually almost impossible. Yeah. Because you can't go through any of those moments, no matter how many co-founders you have and how big a team is and how much money you got in the bank. If you don't love it, it's just impossible, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's obviously times where I've never wanted to quit, but there's times where it's really, really, really hard. But there's also times where it's so, last week when we won that airline contract, like there are times where it's so fun.
Like, it's like 2 million cans is fun for the moment and stress later.
Yeah. Especially when your can manufacturer won't make your cans.
Mate, thanks so much for going down and having the conversation. That's been so good to learn about you, the journey, and congrats because you've achieved so much in such a short period of time in so many ways. So really excited to see what you guys do in the next stage, but appreciate your time and thanks so much.
Honestly, thanks for having me.
Pleasure, man.
Wicked.
See you soon.
Cheers.